Am I the a-hole? My wife became emotionally abusive since giving birth. She topped it off by cheating. Now she's begging me to reconsider. I, 28 male, have been married to my wife, 27 female, for 2 years, together for 4. 14 months ago, we had our first baby. She hasn't gone back to work, and I have been the sole breadwinner. Her choice. Since she gave birth, my wife has become a nightmare to deal with. She has been irritable, angry at me for the smallest reasons, and constantly complaining about everything. Somehow, everything is my fault. All she does is hold the baby all day, even when he doesn't need to be held, and scroll through her phone, while everything else is my responsibility. We haven't had sex for over a year and a half, and whenever I try to address it, she lashes out at me. Even though I'm the only one working and I do all the housework, I'm still insensitive and don't care about her. I didn't even bring up sex until 3 months postpartum. I was basically her emotional punching bag. I tried to get her to therapy and address her behavior, but all I got in return was more verbal abuse. I hated our marriage. I wanted to end it, but I was scared of the idea of co-parenting, the social backlash of ending a marriage with a child involved, and if I'm honest, a small part of me was hoping that somehow things would get better. Well, last month, she made it a lot easier to end things. She told me she was going to a bar with her friends and came home at 4 a.m., drunk. As soon as she fell asleep, I snooped through her phone and found texts between her and a random guy implying that she went to a hotel room with him. I was almost relieved when I saw them. I could finally walk away from this miserable marriage without guilt or regret. The first thing I did was take a DNA test for the baby. He is mine. As soon as the results came back, I informed my wife that I was aware of her infidelity and that our marriage was over. She broke down crying, begged for my forgiveness, and tried to use every excuse in the book: postpartum depression, past trauma, alcohol. She promised to make it up to me, said she would do whatever I wanted, and that she didn't want our family to break apart. But I wasn't having any of it. I already hated this marriage, and the infidelity was just the nail in the coffin. We still live together, and she has been begging me to reconsider, promising me everything under the sun. But I have no intention of reconsidering, and I told her she is not allowed to speak to me anymore. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Postpartum is addressed by therapy, not with adultery. I'd honestly start separation proceedings. Just make sure you kept screenshots of her texts. I already have the screenshots. Cheating after denying me sex for over a year and a half and lashing out at me for even trying to address it is straight up vile. She couldn't care less about me when she did it. There is no coming back, no matter what she does. I think it's best you divorce. Her behavior towards you is appalling. I agree with Nat. You need to start divorce proceedings. You said it yourself. You were relieved when you saw she cheated because it was a way out. Tell her that. Also, ask why she wouldn't have sex with you for a year and a half, but some random drunk at a bar winks at her, and she's off to a hotel. Obviously, her friends wouldn't tell you, so if you stay with her, it's on the honor system, and she doesn't seem honorable. She's scared because you're her bankroll, nothing else. Not the a-hole. Red line. No mistake, she knew what she was doing. She let a strange D in, but not yours, for a year. Not a husband on the planet is going to forgive/reconcile with a wife who does that. Get a female lawyer, get at least 50% custody, and go find a good, loyal, faithful new wife/stepmom. Just curious, why a female lawyer? I can't speak to their logic here, but in my experience, women lawyers will fight for you harder than a male lawyer. I've had 4 lawyers for custody issues. Fired the first 2, the third retired, and so did the 4th, but after my kid turned 18. Lawyers 3 and 4 were women, and they got me much better custody agreements than 1 and 2 even bothered trying for. The 4th ended up getting me full custody. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not allowing my son to go to his paternal grandparents' anniversary barbecue because his father's stepchildren will be there? I, 33 female, have a 7-year-old son with my ex, 35 male. Almost a year ago, I was given full custody of our son, and my ex was awarded supervised visitation. The reason for this was the abuse our son suffered at the hands of his father's stepchildren, 12 and 13. This was a very difficult battle to win. It started 3 years ago when my son came home from his father's house, and my ex announced he had gotten remarried over the weekend. He then asked me to pay half toward the clothes he had bought for our son for the wedding because they got ruined. Of course I didn't pay, but I did ask why he expected me to cover half and how the clothes got ruined. He said he felt we should split the cost of big items like that, but refused to explain what had happened. Later that evening, when I was bathing my son, I noticed some bruises on him, which made me suspicious. He mentioned his arms hurt and that the big kids had done it. A few weeks later, my ex called me and asked me to come and calm our son down. He said our son was hysterical and he had been unable to calm him. When I got to his house, our son was still crying and wanted to come home with me. My ex's wife said one of her kids had accidentally stepped on my son's foot, and my son got scared. But I could hear one of her kids in the background calling my son names and saying they wanted to shut him up. Over time, things got worse. There were more bruises and more days where my son would get very upset at his dad's house. I spoke to my ex, who said his stepkids were struggling with their mom's remarriage and the loss of their dad 4 years prior, making it difficult for them. He admitted he and our son weren't their favorite people, but insisted it wasn't a big deal. I decided to document these incidents and injuries anyway, because it was clear to me that my ex was not concerned, and our son could be at risk in his home. As my son got older, he started verbalizing more about what was going on. The stepkids treated him terribly, and weren't ashamed to be rough with him. He was getting pushed, grabbed, and experiencing an increasing number of accidents. I made a few calls to CPS, and they started offering resources. This ticked off my ex, but I was worried about my son. The verbal incidents weren't really on CPS's radar, but the physical abuse was documented, and some of my ex's family had witnessed things. A few even sent me detailed accounts of what had happened. The incident that led to me getting full custody was when my ex and his wife left the 3 kids home alone for hours. The stepkids dragged my son out of the house and locked him in the garage, where all the dangerous tools were stored. My ex tried to fight to retain custody, but CPS and the judge agreed it was not safe for our son. The reason he only gets supervised visits is that his stepkids are not allowed to be around my son. My ex's parents are celebrating their wedding anniversary next month and want my son to be there. However, my ex and his family are invited and will be attending. I told them I could let them do something with my son another time, but if the stepkids are there, he won't be. They, along with my ex's oldest brother, feel like I'm being unfair, too strict, and not trusting them to keep my son safe. But they didn't in the past. I know that for a fact. Am I the a-hole? I would be honest and tell them, no, I don't trust you to keep him safe. You didn't in the past, and per CPS, those kids are not allowed around my kid. CPS documenting those incidents shows it's not just a personal issue, it's a legal one. She has every right to protect her son from further harm. She has more than a right. She has a legal mandate from the courts to protect her son. Knowingly sending him to go to the party where the offenders will be could actually cause the mom to lose custody, as well as she would be violating the court order. No one wants the child in foster care, which could absolutely happen if she sends him and another incident occurs. You are asking permission to enforce a court order that you fought tooth and nail to get, and which, if you did not enforce it, could get your son taken away from you. I want you to think about that for a minute. I have thought about it. A part of me has asked if I should try to find another compromise, but then I think the one I offered should be enough if they wanted to celebrate with my son. Sometimes I feel bad he doesn't get to have more of a relationship with the rest. The stepkids I don't feel badly about, and there's zero guilt there. But I know he has grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins he doesn't see right now either. Those grandparents and aunts and uncles should have stepped in to protect him if they cared so much. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not supporting my brother's wife while she fights cancer? My brother's wife, 40 female, recently found out she has cancer and has started chemo. They both have great jobs, 3 young children, a beautiful home, and live a pretty desirable lifestyle. Her job has allowed her to take the next year off for her medical emergency. My brother is still working but has been missing a lot of work to support his wife. The other day, he asked me for financial assistance because the cost of maintaining their lifestyle is more than they can afford without both of their full incomes. I can afford to help them, and they would most likely help me if the roles were reversed and I was in need. However, all of my savings are currently invested in stocks that are meant to be my children's inheritance when I eventually pass. The problem I'm having is that they have not made any financial sacrifices, yet they're asking me to cover their expenses, with the promise of eventually paying me back. All of their children still have trust funds and college savings, some of which I personally contributed to. They continue to spend thousands of dollars per month on sports and activities for their family. They still own stocks and have well-funded retirement accounts, as well as business investments. I am retired with a low income but have significant savings that I have invested for my children. Is it unreasonable for me to expect them to trim the fat on their lifestyle and liquidate their own investments before asking me to contribute mine? I feel like an a-hole, but it seems like they're using the pity of the situation to their advantage. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. They're asking you to make sacrifices they aren't making. They may not understand that your situation is no better than theirs, and that you'd have to make cuts they haven't even considered in order to help them. I'd try having an honest conversation about that before accusing them of playing the pity card. His reasoning to me was that they didn't want their hardship to affect their children's normal lives. But they're asking me to make sacrifices that could greatly affect my children's future? I have not yet told him that I won't help him because it feels really wrong for me to do so, but it's really frustrating me. I don't feel comfortable risking my children's inheritance and facing the tax repercussions of pulling my investments when you guys won't consider doing so with your own portfolios. Seems pretty reasonable to me. Not the a-hole. Your brother and his wife should sell their stocks and investments and reduce spending before asking you for help. Your money is for your needs. That's exactly what I'm going to say. To be honest, they don't want their situation to affect their kids, but they're fine with it affecting OP. They expect OP to make sacrifices so they don't have to? Yeah, no, that's unfair. Hey OP, just tell them no, you can't afford it. You're retired now and living on a fixed income. If they don't understand, that's their problem, no doubt about that. Not the a-hole. Sit down and explain all this to him. He needs to hear it. If they had already cut everything and were at risk of being homeless, I could understand. But they don't want to cash things in because of taxes. You would have to pay taxes on assets you liquidated to help them. They can dip into the college funds or sell some stocks to cover their chosen lifestyle. Unfortunately, I think he's going to take this as a personal attack. He's got that big brother attitude. He'll have to get over it. It's crazy for him to expect you to make sacrifices they haven't made. I understand he doesn't want his children's lives to be affected, but that's the reality of cancer. It's unrealistic to expect everything to remain the same. What about the days when no one can take them to their sports because his wife is sick and he needs to work? What if his wife doesn't beat it? Has he considered that the children would rather spend time with their mom instead of being on a soccer field or whatever sport? Not the a-hole. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not covering for my co-worker with a sick kid, resulting in her being fired? I, 25 female, work as a hospice nurse for a home hospice company. All of the nurses are salaried, and we make our own hours for the most part. This is a desirable job for nurses wanting to get out of working 12-hour shifts at hospitals. It's especially desirable for parents. We all have to take turns being on call overnight, roughly once every 2 weeks. This is mandatory. Almost all of my coworkers have kids, everyone except me. In the 3 years I've been here, I have asked my coworkers for virtually nothing. I rarely get sick, and I handle my responsibilities. I have never called out of an on-call shift. My boss has a 3 strikes rule. If you have to call out of your on-call shift 3 times within a year, you get fired. No exceptions. However, if you trade your on-call shift, it doesn't count against you. It only counts against you if our boss has to mandate someone to cover the shift. I have watched my boss fire several people over this in the few years I've worked here. We got a new co-worker, let's call her Mandy, about 4 months ago. She has already called out of her on-call shift twice, so her track record isn't great. Apparently, her husband is active duty and deploys often, and she has 4 kids and struggles to find a babysitter. This past Monday was Mandy's on-call shift again. She sent out an email begging for someone to take it because her babysitter got sick. I offered to trade with her if she worked Valentine's Day for me. Win-win, right? I get Valentine's Day off to go on a date, and Mandy gets her shift covered and avoids getting fired. Mandy said her husband was coming back on Thursday, and they wanted to go out for Valentine's Day. Apparently, their marriage was heading toward divorce, and they really needed this night. She asked if she could cover a shift for me next month instead. I said no chance. She tried guilting and shaming me, so eventually I just said, "Screw it, you're on your own." She tried to backpedal, but I said no. She pleaded with both me and our boss, but Mandy got fired. I can tell my boss and some of our coworkers think I'm an a-hole, since I had the free time to cover her shift and don't have kids or any major obligations. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Her kid got her babysitter sick, and the babysitter canceled. Both were sick, so she had to stay home with her child. Not the a-hole. You did offer to cover her shift, and she refused the entirely reasonable compromise that you offered in exchange. All those co-workers could have covered it, and your boss is blaming you for the boss enforcing their own policy on someone who absolutely violated that policy. Nobody here is right except UOP. Her emergencies are not yours. Yeah, if date was really that significant, going out on Valentine's Day exactly shouldn't matter. Plenty of people do holidays, not even just Valentine's Day, on days leading up or after. I can't imagine someone coming back from deployment would want to go out the very next day. Even with a couple hours difference, jet lag would suck, and Saturday would have been the better option. If their marriage failing or not depends on going out on Valentine's Day and not another day so badly, their marriage is screwed either way. She could have had her Valentine's on Saturday. A simple one-day shift, and she could have made the deal with you and kept her job. Not the a-hole, and making the choice to have kids means the responsibility to take care of those kids. It is never someone else's problem. Seriously, and quite frankly, I would rather celebrate a day later when places are not so packed and prices aren't jacked up just because it's Valentine's Day. Besides, if her marriage is failing, going out on Valentine's Day instead of a regular Saturday isn't going to change anything. And I imagine getting fired is going to do more damage to the marriage than missing a random holiday due to the added stress of now being down to one income. The coworker didn't think things through, and that's on no one but her. Besides, she had already called out twice in 4 months of employment while knowing about the 3 strikes rule. And it's not even that they can't call out on a normal day. It's only on the on-call nights once every 2 weeks. So, you figure in 4 months she's worked there. Let's say it's been 18 weeks. That means she has called out for 2 of her 9 on-call shifts. The girl was going to be fired eventually anyway.